I'm Thammathip. You can call me Tham. I'm from University of South Australia, and I'm presenting this work on behalf of my co-author. I think all of them are here today, actually. So we have Gunley. So do you want to put your hand up? And we have Barrett, who should be here. Oh, there he is. And Bruce, are you here? Oh, Bruce is. Oh, you are here. Yes. And Mark. Oh, Mike's away. He's a bit. Okay. He must be busy. Okay. So you might be wondering what Superman Giant is all about. It's like going to get to that soon. Just be a bit patient. So the overview of today's talk is just basically going to give you some motivation of our work and cover the background, user study, implication, and the challenges ahead. So the motivation is basically similar to what Kang-Soo just presented, but in his area, it's like a convergence of 3 different technologies. For us, it's 3 different technologies too, but different domain from him. So it's the combination of mixed reality, unmanned aerial vehicle, or drones, and multi-scale collaborative environments. And that is kind of merged into multi-scale mixed reality collaboration is the term that we come up with. And we propose this convergence to address certain challenges when we collaborate at a large scale. So normally, like when we talk about collaboration, it's like, you imagine something within the room scale. But what happens if you collaborate on something much larger, like shipbuilding or construction, this kind of thing? So you kind of need different combination of technology to address it. Okay, so this is an example concept of MSMRC, which is short for multi-scale mixed reality collaboration. This is an example of building construction scenario. You can imagine that you have an on-site engineer who is wearing an optical see-through HMD, like a HoloLens or something, and he can scan and map the immediate surrounding of his environment, right, from inside or something. But then also you can imagine that there's a telepresence user who is using a drone that can fly around the building, covering the exterior of the building, that kind of thing, and capture the data sent to server. And from the data captured from these collaborators, they can reconstruct the current state of the construction and then share that to the remote client who can use VR to visualize. Okay, so the motivation for this paper is just one aspect of MSMRC, and that is focusing on the telepresence aspect for the remote telepresence user. So in this particular paper, we examine a single aspect of the proposed concept, and that is to better understand user perception being in multi-scale environment, such that we learn how to improve user interaction and the overall experience of MSMRC. So example questions, research questions that we ask here is, for example, how should the remote user control flying telepresence such that they feel as if they are like there, immersed? Another example question is, would it be beneficial for a flying telepresence UAV to have stereo camera so the telepresence user can have stereo vision? And just to cover a bit of the background, that is kind of cover a whole range of domain. I have picked just a few examples that is most relevant. First is the past research on multi-scale mixed reality collaboration. And the first that come to mind is like the work from Kiyokawa from Takemura Lab, right, from 1999. And in that case, Kiyokawa demonstrated an innovative system that allows users to make a transition between AR and VR and collaborate across multiple scales, setting which is kind of the first example of MSMRC. Next one is basically Mark, who created a system that show magic book interface, which allow one user to be inside in a virtual scene and experience it from an ecocentric view. And another user is basically guiding from an exocentric view or AR view of the scene. And with today technology, we have created and demonstrated this example of MSMRC. So you can see on the left is the view through HoloLens of the local user, and on the right is basically the virtual environment where the VR user can scale up, down. So go back a bit in the history. The term multi-scale collaborative virtual environment, the concept itself was first popularized by Zhang and Furness, and they gave an excellent example of collaboration between multiple users at different scales in a city planner scenario. And from their work, they pointed out several benefits from collaboration at different scale. And please refer to their paper for further detail for that. One of the most relevant work that I have to mention is from Langban, Ruder, and Steinig. And these have the model paper that we take after. And they compare perception, spatial perception of different size of the user and their collaborator. Okay, okay, got the picture. Okay, cool. And another area is basically in UAV, of course. And with today technology and research, we already have like both indoor and outdoor mapping, reconstruction, and autonomous navigation. And for example, with the consumer drone today, like the Skydio R1, you can buy it for like $2,000, and it's like fully autonomous already with like 13 cameras on board. So it's kind of it's coming, and in several years, of course, we can definitely see it being used in all sorts of application. But coming back to our research, we are more interested in a drone that can be controlled, partly controlled at least. So you can imagine a semi-autonomous drone where you can, for example, in this case, control by your body movement. And in this case, it's basically the drone is mapped to the person's head movement. And Keda Hikuchi is basically my close friend, and his work inspired me into looking into using drone and mixed reality together. So in his work, you can see example of body movement here that is mapped directly to the drone. And so from the first person perspective, the control is natural and intuitive because it's how your head is, where your head is looking, pointing, as opposed to having a separate controller in your hand, and you have to control the drone explicitly. And so this is kind of inspiration for us to create the interaction technique called Superman and Jan that I will explain. So combining that interaction technique to what we are using today, for example, in this case, where we have Google Map. How we navigate in Google Map normally is basically you can drag, rotate, zoom in, and zoom out when you want to move to the next building, right? So this kind of a repeated process. And you can imagine if we combine the interaction technique and this metaphor that is kind of we are familiar to, we can create a new interaction technique. So let me use a pointer. So you can imagine with a normal drone, with KDA's technique, as you move around, the drone map with your movement one-to-one, right? But what if you become a giant? So that your one step, 50 centimeter step in the real world is mapped to 50 meters step in virtual environment. And that's basically what the techniques that we propose is about. So as you scale up, you can change the body size, the movement gain naturally. The thing is difficult to actually create an actual physical stereo camera that is adaptive to your IPD as you scale up. So we have the Superman mode as well. So in this case, you don't scale the IPD, but you only scale the movement gain. So one step, 50 centimeters here, is still translated to 50 meters in the virtual environment. And so that's the two techniques that we are comparing. So for the user study, we are interested in user perception of how and what makes them feel like a giant. It's kind of a part of the whole experience of being in multi-scale environment. So for the first study, we look at comparing static and dynamic IPD. So for Superman, you have unchanged IPD, but you have increase the height and then the movement gain, just like in giant mode. So this example. So I'm going to show you the giant mode first. You can see from this, the lower right corner show the user view, and that is the virtual environment. So as you scale up and you step a little bit to the side, you already have 20 meters across. So you can navigate just like you can imagine Google Maps, right? So you have zoom out, you move a little bit, zoom back in to get into that space. And this is the Superman mode. I don't think you can see, but let me just use this. It's kind of very small because it's 100 times difference. So this is like 1-to-1, this is 1-to-100. So as you scale up, you step the same as the other case, and you have scale down to the different area. So in the first experiment, we just compare these two different techniques, and our hypothesis is basically we think that dynamic IPD will make the user perceive as if they are a giant, and it causes less simulated sickness during the transition, vertical transition. One thing I forgot to mention is that in this experiment, the user is wearing the HTC Vive, and they can walk around the room. The room is around 3 by 3 meters, and when they kind of hit the edge of the room, they have to kind of scale down, step back a little bit, scale up again to kind of make the move. And we didn't provide any self-avatar in this case because it would break the kind of create a confounding factor in the experiment. Okay, so from the result, we use the two alternative false choice. We show them two pictures, A1 and A2, and they have to choose which one they feel like describe that experience. And it turned out that with the dynamic IPD, where you increase the IPD as you scale up, the user felt more like a giant, which is obvious, and you get significant result here, as you can see. In terms of simulated sickness, I think we might not have enough immersion duration time, and so we only found post-immersion difference between pre and post, but it's no significant difference across the condition. So with the follow-up study, we will definitely expose them to the environment more, to experience more. So that's basically the first result. So dynamic IPD is kind of create illusion that you are giant better than having no dynamic IPD. In the second experiment, it followed that from the first experiment, you can see that there are certain people that still feel that they are giant in the static mode. So the thing is that there was the height difference as they scale up, and there was the gain that is the same. So we felt that we should look at and compare the IPD and the gain, which one has a more like influence on the perception. So we create this second part where you have a sphere, virtual of 3 different sizes, and we provide minimal environment and rich environment to compare. So it creates a 3 by 3 by 2 full factorial. So 3 level of sphere size and 3 level of IPD, 3 level of movement gain, and 2 different environment, minimal and rich Q. In the training phase, they work with embodiment, so they know roughly what's the size. But in the real task, they do not see their body, so they only have the visual information. These are examples of what was shown. So in this case, we have 3 hypotheses. So larger IPD should translate to smaller virtual object, perceive smaller virtual object. Larger movement gain is the same. And the presence of rich visual cue would impact the judgment of the object size, as they might use the environment to judge the object. So it turned out that IPD was the main factor, kind of predictable, but it is not that obvious when we try it, so we have to do this experiment. And the presence of environment cue definitely affect the user perception. And in the last experiment, we did it with the video see-through, so we pre-recorded the video using stereo camera. So in this example, this is an indoor environment. And this example of different height and different IPD. So we have like normal IPD, normal seated height, and then double of that height, and then double IPD. We also did the outdoor capture using a drone. And this is example. Okay. Sorry, cannot play it. It's okay. Right. So the hypothesis is basically larger IPD cause participants to perceive themselves as a giant. It's basically the first hypothesis. Then we have the eye height. So in this case, we are suspect that eye height have a role in the user perception. And the result shown kind of mixed result, where you have a significant difference between the normal IPD and normal height, and the extreme with the larger IPD and larger height. So to conclude the 3 experiments, in the first experiment, we found that IPD, that dynamic IPD is basically create a better experience for the user to feel like a giant. In the second experiment, the IPD is definitely has more impact than the movement gain. And then in the last experiment, the combination of IPD and eye height influence the user judgment. So what's the implication here? As you can see from this photo, this is a real-world construction site, right? But it is slightly kind of miniaturized. It is basically a photography effect using two shift lens to create an effect of a miniature scene. So this is the same thing when we actually create stereo camera, adaptive stereo camera. So you can create this kind of feeling in mixed reality. And so this feeling kind of gives you the signifier and the kind of affordance that you can reach out and grab things, right? And this like perfectly fit to the one of the classic interaction technique in 3D UI. That's from Mount Minay, the scale world grab. In his interaction, you scale the world, and it comes within your arm reach, and you manipulate the virtual object directly, right? But in the real world, you cannot scale the real world, of course, but what you can do is to scale yourself. And so you can reuse this interaction technique as well. And it is just one example of what you can do with scaling your body in mixed reality. So I think I'm running out of time. And so please refer to the paper for more information, because there is so much information in there that I cannot cram into this presentation. And thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a bit longer than we expected, so we have time for at most one question. Do we have one question? Oh, okay, then I would like to ask you to talk to the author after we're out of time.